What would you do if the one person you loved, the one person you trusted above all others, betrayed you for nothing more than greed? This is the story of a woman whose ambition led her to a dark and horrifying place. A story of a perfect family torn apart, not by an accident or tragedy, but by a cold, calculated act of betrayal. Welcome to Dark True Crime Stories. Meet Amanda Turner, a 39-year-old woman who, by all outward appearances, had it all. She was married to a successful businessman, Stephen Turner, the owner of a prominent law firm. Together, they had 3 children, a picture-perfect family. But hidden behind this facade of wealth and happiness was something darker, something more dangerous. And it was about to come to light in the most shocking way. Amanda Turner had always been the type of person who knew how to make an impression. Beautiful, charming, and always well-dressed, she had a smile that could light up any room. She had everything: an expensive house, luxury cars, a loving husband, and children who adored her. On the outside, her life seemed flawless. But Amanda wasn't content with just what she had. She wanted more. She wanted it all. And to get it, she was willing to destroy everything she had built. Stephen, her husband, had built an empire, a business that was worth millions of dollars. And Amanda knew that if something were to happen to him, she would inherit it all. But that wasn't the only thing Amanda wanted. She wanted control. She wanted to be free of the shackles of marriage, free of the responsibility of being a mother. She wanted a life that was hers alone, without the burden of others. And when she saw an opportunity to make that happen, she didn't hesitate. She set her sights on one thing: poisoning her family for the inheritance. It all began one cold, winter evening. Stephen had come home from a long day at the office, tired but content. The children were upstairs doing their homework, and Amanda was preparing dinner, just like every other evening. But tonight was different. Tonight, Amanda had a plan. In the kitchen, she mixed a deadly substance into the evening's meal. She had spent months researching poisons, finding the perfect one that would go undetected. It was tasteless, odorless, and would leave no trace. Just a simple addition to the family's food, and her future would be secure. She had been patient. For years, she had played the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But in the back of her mind, the thought of the inheritance was always there. She had watched Stephen pour his heart and soul into his business, but it was always clear to her that if he passed, the wealth would be hers. It would be enough to set her free. The dinner went as it always did. Laughter filled the dining room, and the family shared stories of their day. No one suspected a thing. The children ate without hesitation, Stephen too, savoring each bite. But as the meal continued, something changed. Slowly, Stephen began to feel unwell. His face turned pale, and his breath became shallow. He tried to ignore it at first, blaming it on the stress of the day, but as the minutes passed, it became clear that something was wrong. He pushed his plate away, telling Amanda he didn't feel well. His body started to tremble, and his stomach twisted in agony. Amanda remained calm, watching him closely, the corners of her mouth curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But then, something unexpected happened. The children, too, began to show signs of illness. One by one, they started to feel the same symptoms: nausea, dizziness, and severe stomach cramps. Panic began to rise in Amanda's chest as she watched her perfect world begin to crumble. She hadn't planned on this. She hadn't planned on her children's suffering. Her plan was always to spare them, to make sure they inherited the money once she got rid of Stephen. As the night wore on, the situation grew dire. Amanda's carefully laid plan had backfired. Stephen's condition worsened, and he collapsed onto the floor, struggling to breathe. The children were in a similar state, dizzy, barely able to keep their eyes open. Amanda knew she had to act fast. She dialed 911, pretending to be frantic as she screamed into the phone for help. "My family is sick. They can't breathe. I think they've been poisoned." Emergency services arrived at the Turner household within minutes. Paramedics rushed in, but it was already too late. Stephen was dead. His children were rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but after hours of treatment, they too had stabilized, barely alive, but alive nonetheless. The authorities immediately began investigating, suspecting foul play. The investigation revealed that Stephen Turner had been poisoned, and the trace amounts found in his system matched the exact substance Amanda had secretly added to the food. But that wasn't the only thing the authorities uncovered. The children's symptoms, though severe, didn't quite match the level of poisoning they would expect from such a potent substance. Amanda's story was full of holes. Her calm demeanor in the face of her family's crisis raised suspicions. The investigators dug deeper into her past, uncovering a pattern of behavior that painted a very different picture than the one she had presented to the world. Amanda had been acting strangely in the weeks leading up to the incident. She had taken out large life insurance policies on Stephen and the children, policies that were set to pay out in the event of their deaths. But the most damning piece of evidence came from a private investigator hired by Stephen's family. This investigator uncovered a secret bank account that Amanda had opened under a false name. The account contained large sums of money that couldn't be explained by her earnings or her lifestyle. And then there were the texts between Amanda and a known criminal who specialized in procuring illegal substances, including poisons. The walls were closing in on Amanda. The evidence against her was overwhelming. She had poisoned her family, not just for the money, but to escape the life she had built. She wanted to be free of Stephen, free of the burden of motherhood, and free of the restrictions of being a wife. She had seen an opportunity and taken it, thinking that no one would ever suspect her. But Amanda's plan had backfired. In her quest for control, she had made a fatal mistake. The detective in charge of the investigation, Detective Alex, was relentless. He knew that there was something more to the story. He could sense the darkness behind Amanda's perfect smile, the coldness that she had hidden beneath the surface for so long. As the investigation continued, Amanda was arrested, and the full extent of her crime was revealed. She was charged with first-degree murder for the poisoning of her husband, Stephen Turner, and attempted murder for the poisoning of her children. The trial was swift, and the evidence was undeniable. But Amanda didn't show any remorse. In court, she sat there, her eyes cold, her face expressionless, as the prosecutor laid out the details of her deadly plot. She had wanted to be free, and she had been willing to destroy everything in her path to get what she wanted. As the jury deliberated, Amanda sat in her cell, waiting for the inevitable. Her life, the perfect life she had so carefully crafted, had been destroyed by her own actions. And yet, there was no sign of guilt on her face. She had no remorse for what she had done, no sense of responsibility for the suffering she had caused. She had only one thought: when this was all over, the money would be hers. But justice had other plans. The jury returned with a verdict of guilty. Amanda Turner was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The once perfect wife and mother who had poisoned her family for inheritance would never see the outside world again. But as the story of Amanda Turner's betrayal came to an end, there was one question that lingered. How many others like her are out there? How many families have been destroyed by hidden greed, deception, and ambition? This is a story of how far a person can go when they think no one is watching, when they believe they are above reproach, and when their desire for wealth and power eclipses any sense of morality or love. But what if Amanda wasn't the only one? What if others are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Stay tuned as we continue to uncover the most shocking true crime stories, where the truth is always far darker than fiction. After Amanda's conviction, the public was left in shock. The once perfect family had been torn apart by a mother's greed. Amanda was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but the story didn't end there. As the investigation into her crime deepened, there were whispers of a greater conspiracy, something far more sinister than Amanda's personal betrayal. The prosecutor, Detective Alex, and the rest of the investigation team began to ask themselves, was Amanda just a lone actor in this heinous plot, or was she part of a much bigger network? As Detective Alex re-examined the evidence, something didn't sit right. Amanda's meticulous planning and cold execution of the crime were disturbing, but there was one crucial detail that kept nagging at him. The poison Amanda had used was an incredibly rare, expensive substance. It wasn't something a woman like her could just procure on her own. Who had helped her? And why hadn't she ever mentioned it? After weeks of digging through bank records, old phone records, and interviewing people close to the Turner family, a chilling discovery was made. Amanda wasn't the mastermind behind the poisoning of her family. She had been a pawn. The true orchestrator of the crime was someone much closer to the Turner family than anyone could have imagined, someone who had been hiding in plain sight for years. It was Stephen's business partner, Michael Larson, who had been behind the plot all along. Michael had been Stephen's closest confidant and trusted business partner for over a decade. He had been at the side of the Turner family since the beginning of the law firm's success. But Michael Larson was far from the loyal partner he appeared to be. In truth, he had been silently biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike. It turned out that Michael had long been aware of Amanda's growing dissatisfaction with her life. He had watched as she became more and more frustrated with the confines of her marriage, her role as a mother, and her dependence on Stephen's wealth. It was Michael who had first suggested to Amanda that she might be better off without Stephen, that a perfect life, free from the constraints of marriage, awaited her. But Michael had his own agenda. While Amanda's sights were set on freedom and wealth, Michael's ambitions were more specific. He wanted to control the Turner estate, to take over the law firm, and to get his hands on the millions Stephen had built. In Amanda, he saw an opportunity to manipulate her desires for wealth and turn her into an unwitting accomplice. He would help her, provide her with the poison, and together they would take out Stephen. But Amanda would not be the only one to suffer. Michael knew that if Stephen were to die, the children would also be part of the inheritance, and their lives would be collateral damage in his pursuit of power. Amanda, desperate to escape her life, was easily manipulated. She took the bait, and in return, Michael provided her with everything she needed: the poison, a plan, and the confidence to carry out the act. But Michael had an even darker plan in motion. He had no intention of leaving Amanda with the inheritance. No, once Stephen was dead, Michael intended to have Amanda out of the picture as well, making it look like a tragic accident where she simply couldn't handle the grief. But things didn't go as planned. Amanda had underestimated the level of surveillance around her. The children survived, though barely, and the evidence against her was too strong to deny. As the investigation continued, Michael's role in the crime began to surface. It was clear now that he had played a much more active part in the murder than anyone could have imagined. But Michael Larson had done something no one expected. He had disappeared. The search for Michael Larson became the primary focus of the investigation. With the world now aware of his involvement, Michael was on the run, leaving behind a trail of lies, deceit, and destruction. Detective Alex followed the breadcrumbs, leading him to an isolated cabin in the woods where Larson had been hiding. It was there, in the dead of night, that the final confrontation took place. When Detective Alex arrived at the cabin, he found Michael Larson sitting in the dimly lit living room, a gun in his hand, and a look of cold defiance in his eyes. The confrontation was brief but intense. Michael Larson wasn't just a man running from justice. He was a man who had carefully constructed his escape, one that included eliminating anyone who could stand in his way. "You're too late," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper as he raised the gun. "The game is over. It was never about Amanda. It was always about the money. And now, you're part of this too." But before Michael could make his final move, a shot rang out. Detective Alex had already anticipated his next move and had called for backup. Michael Larson was captured and taken into custody, his reign of terror over the Turner family finally coming to an end. As Michael Larson was arrested and his plans unraveled, a final, chilling detail emerged. The police discovered that Amanda had been in contact with Michael just before the poisoning occurred. She had known of his betrayal all along. She had known that he had no intention of letting her live with the inheritance. But in a twisted turn, Amanda had decided to betray him first. Before Michael could strike, Amanda had already informed the police of his involvement. Her plan was simple: use him to eliminate Stephen, and then, once she had the inheritance in her hands, get rid of Michael as well. But her own greed led to her downfall. In the end, it was her own manipulation that would be her undoing. Both Amanda Turner and Michael Larson now face life in prison, their lives destroyed by their own desires for wealth and power. The Turner children, though scarred by the traumatic events, are now safe, free from the toxic grip of their parents' ambition. But the question remains: how many others are out there, quietly plotting to destroy their families, their loved ones, all for the sake of inheritance and power? This is a story of how greed, manipulation, and betrayal can ruin lives, and how justice, though delayed, can ultimately prevail. But how many people have yet to be caught? And what lengths will others go to for money and power? The story of Amanda Turner and Michael Larson serves as a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most perfect. The Turner children, though physically safe now, were left with scars that would last a lifetime. The trauma they had endured, the nightmare they had survived, was something no child should ever experience. As part of their recovery, they were placed into the care of their maternal aunt, Sarah Turner, who had always been close to the family. Sarah, deeply shocked by the revelation that her sister-in-law was capable of such a betrayal, struggled to understand how Amanda could have turned into someone so unrecognizable. Sarah Turner had always been close to her brother, Stephen. She was a regular part of family gatherings, the trusted confidant in times of need. In her eyes, Stephen and Amanda had the perfect marriage, a marriage built on love, respect, and shared ambition. But as Sarah began to care for the children, something strange happened. The children, particularly Emily, the youngest, began to act out in ways that left Sarah disturbed. Emily would often wake up in the middle of the night, screaming and thrashing in fear, haunted by nightmares of her mother. It was clear that the trauma ran deeper than anyone had realized. But there was something else, something Sarah could never quite shake. The children's behavior seemed to change after their mother's arrest. It wasn't just the grief of losing their father. It was something else entirely. The children weren't just victims. They were pieces of a much larger puzzle. One night, while going through old family photos, Sarah stumbled upon something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her sister-in-law. Hidden among the pictures was a letter that had been tucked away in a drawer, forgotten by everyone. It was written by Amanda, addressed to her children, but never sent. The words on the paper were chilling. Amanda spoke of her plan to free herself from the chains of family life, and how her children, though loved, were merely obstacles to her future. But what caught Sarah's attention the most was a sentence in the letter that seemed to confirm a terrifying possibility. Amanda had been preparing her children for something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. In the letter, she stated, "When the time comes, you will understand. It will all be ours. No one will stop us." What did Amanda mean by ours? Was she truly planning to leave her children with nothing? Or had she been plotting something even darker from the very beginning? The discovery of this letter sent shockwaves through Sarah's understanding of her sister-in-law. Amanda had been playing a long game, one that involved far more than just poisoning her husband. It wasn't just the inheritance Amanda wanted, it was power. She had been planning to take control of everything, and she had been grooming her children to help her achieve that goal. The idea that Amanda had poisoned her family to escape not just Stephen's grip, but to seize control over everything they owned, left Sarah reeling. But as she pieced together Amanda's manipulative behavior, something even more chilling began to emerge. Sarah's suspicions grew when she spoke with the children's therapist. The therapist, who had been working with Emily and her siblings, revealed something disturbing. Emily, in particular, seemed to have a strong attachment to her mother's criminal behavior. She was fascinated by the way Amanda had controlled everyone, manipulated Stephen, and carried out the plot without hesitation. As Sarah dug deeper, she found out that Emily had been writing letters to Amanda in prison. The letters, though seemingly innocent at first, became more unsettling with each passing week. In the letters, Emily expressed admiration for her mother's cunning and control. "You did what you had to do," one of them read. "You're the smartest person I know. I'll never forget you." The therapist reported this to Sarah, warning that Emily's attachment to her mother's actions could indicate a deeper psychological impact, a desire to follow in Amanda's footsteps. It was as if the cycle of manipulation and control was about to be passed down to the next generation. And if Emily's behavior was any indication, the children were still very much under Amanda's influence, even from behind bars. But before Sarah could fully comprehend the weight of what she had uncovered, a shocking phone call changed everything. The authorities had just informed her that Amanda Turner had been granted a prison transfer, a highly unusual move. She was being moved to a facility with a higher level of security, and the reason for the transfer? A special request from Amanda herself. "I need to be closer to my family," Amanda had said, a chilling smile in her voice. "It's time to finish what I started." Now, as the investigation takes a shocking turn, Sarah Turner, the aunt of Amanda's children, must confront the truth. Has the legacy of deception and manipulation truly ended, or is it about to continue? The transfer of Amanda Turner to a more secure facility was highly unusual. At first, Sarah thought it was just a routine move, perhaps a step in Amanda's attempts to escape the consequences of her actions. But when she received the phone call from Detective Alex, everything changed. "Sarah, you need to listen to me carefully," Alex said, his voice urgent. "I just got word from the prison. Amanda requested this move for a reason. She's been in contact with someone on the outside, someone who's been working with her since the beginning." Sarah's heart pounded. Who could Amanda still be communicating with? Was it Michael Larson, her co-conspirator? Or worse, had Amanda somehow orchestrated a network of supporters, planning her revenge even from within the walls of a maximum security prison? Detective Alex had traced the calls made from Amanda's prison cell. While the authorities had thought they had control over her communications, Amanda's network was far more advanced than they realized. Hidden within her cell, Amanda had arranged for someone to keep her plans alive, someone who had access to the family's finances, someone who had deep connections within the Turner law firm. And as the investigation deepened, Alex uncovered a chilling connection: Amanda's eldest child, Emily. Emily had been showing signs of affection for her mother's criminal actions, but now, it seemed more than just admiration. Through encrypted messages on the family's old devices, it became clear that Emily was the one orchestrating the final steps of Amanda's plot. The child who had been traumatized by her mother's betrayal was now being shaped into a carbon copy of her. Emily had been receiving instructions, subtle at first, but increasingly direct, on how to manipulate the Turner estate, making sure Amanda's inheritance would go exactly as planned. The realization hit Sarah like a cold wave. Amanda's influence had not only survived prison, it had infected her children. Emily was preparing for something far darker than anyone could have guessed. It wasn't just about taking control of the family fortune anymore. It was about finishing what Amanda had started. And for Emily, the idea of using the law firm and its millions to her advantage had become an obsession. But what was her plan? What did Emily think she could do, locked in her aunt's care, with the law enforcement closely watching? Was she waiting for the right moment to strike, to execute her mother's twisted vision and secure the fortune for herself? As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Sarah knew she had to act fast. She couldn't let Amanda's legacy of manipulation take root in her children. But Emily wasn't the only one involved. In a hidden meeting with Detective Alex, Sarah learned the shocking truth. Amanda had been building an underground network even before her arrest. A group of loyalists, people who had been loyal to the Turner family, but who had secretly been using the firm's resources to line their own pockets. Some of these loyalists had been under Amanda's control, but now, they were under Emily's influence. As the day drew closer for Amanda's hearing, it became clear to Sarah that Emily wasn't the only one with ambitions of control. The remaining members of the Turner law firm had been quietly divided, some loyal to Stephen's memory, others only interested in their own futures. The firm itself was on the verge of collapse, with powerful figures plotting their own takeover, all under Emily's subtle guidance. But the most terrifying part was yet to come. The authorities had discovered that Amanda had set in motion a plan that would ensure her children would be positioned to take control of everything once she was freed. She had started a scheme in which Emily would take over the law firm as its youngest partner, giving her access to the estate and resources long before she turned 30. With Emily at the helm, the future of the Turner family business would be shaped by someone who had already been corrupted by Amanda's poisonous ambition. Sarah had to act. She knew that Emily's fate had already been sealed by her mother's dark influence, but she was determined to stop it from spreading further. The only way to put an end to this nightmare was to confront Emily directly, before the law firm fell into her hands, before the legacy of corruption and betrayal spread through the family once again. In a final confrontation, Sarah sat face to face with Emily. The tension in the room was unbearable. Emily, no longer the innocent child Sarah once knew, sat there with an almost cold smile on her face. "You've been a fool, Aunt Sarah," Emily said, her voice smooth, controlled, and far more dangerous than Sarah had ever imagined. "I've already won. The law firm, the money, the power, it's all mine now. I'll finish what my mother started, and no one can stop me." Sarah's heart raced. She was looking at a girl she once loved, a girl who was now her enemy. An enemy so deeply entrenched in the lies and manipulation of her mother that she would stop at nothing to secure her victory. But just as Sarah was about to make her move, there was a knock at the door. The authorities had arrived just in time. They had traced the entire conspiracy back to Emily, and they were ready to arrest her before she could do any more damage. But as they took Emily away, Sarah realized something chilling. This was only the beginning. Emily was just the first of many who could rise from the ashes of Amanda's deception. Was the cycle of greed, manipulation, and betrayal truly over? Or had it only just begun? As Sarah watched Emily being led away in handcuffs, she couldn't help but wonder how many families were out there, living in the shadow of deception, unknowingly harboring future generations of corruption and betrayal. The Turner family's tragic tale is one of manipulation, power, and greed, where a mother's ambition led to the poisoning of her family and the devastating destruction of a once perfect life. But the legacy of Amanda Turner lived on in her children, one who was ready to take up the mantle of deception, and another, Sarah, who would fight to stop it. In the end, the question remains, how far will people go to get what they want? And at what cost does it come? This is the end of the Turner family saga, but it is not the end of the stories we uncover here. Stay tuned for more shocking true crime cases. And remember, sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most perfect. Keep your eyes open. The truth is always darker than you think. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey. If you were shocked by the twists and turns in this case, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories.